Hi, welcome to the show. I'm Anthony Leckis, chairperson of the Melbourne Bisexual Network.
And I'm Ruby Mountford. I'm the Vice President of the Melbourne Bisexual Network.
And today we're here to talk about bisexual mental health, a very important issue. At the start of 2007, Julia Taylor, a researcher at Trobe University, began her research on the largest mental health study on bisexuality ever in Australia.
Yeah, well, and I think it's one of the first studies that's been solely about people who are attracted to more than one gender. So 2017. So that's also bi and pan and anyone who chooses to relate who identify that way.
We also have a radio show where we talk about all things bisexual, and we got to speak to Julia Taylor about her research.
Yeah, we did.
And she had some preliminary findings. She has some expectations about what her study is going to show.
As she explained to us on the interview, she undertook the study because there was a bit of surprise among those bodies that bisexual people continued to show to have worse mental health outcomes than gay and lesbian people, because that wasn't expected. But then I think, so as she's been doing the study itself, and similar studies have been done in the UK, it's really been about the fact that bisexual people and pansexual people are people without a home. So and they experience double discrimination, which blocks self-helping behaviours and causes a lot of loneliness. Like, people are pack animals. We want to belong. That's, fashion trends in themselves show us that we all want to belong. And so bisexual people are in a unique position, maybe not unique, but they are in a position like a few other groups in the community find themselves in, where the community is not accepting and neither is a straight community. So we never feel comfortable or at home in either, which means that we don't feel like we could be ourselves and be relaxed in either, which means that we're cut off from other people.
Right, and that presents safety issues, because as humans, we're wired for connection, we're wired for closeness and bonding, and a very significant part of our identity, which is our bisexuality or pansexuality, is something that creates some problems for us. It doesn't help us to feel closer to people.
Well, I don't think, I know what you mean, but I don't think bisexuality creates the problems. It's people's reactions to it.
That's what I meant, yeah.
And it's particularly troubling for bisexual women. We tend to have much higher rates of self-harm, eating disorders and suicidal tendencies than lesbian women and straight women. We also experience, and bisexual men experience sexual assault more than gay men, are more likely to be raped than gay men and straight men. Bisexual women are more likely to be raped, significantly more likely to be raped or assaulted by an intimate partner than lesbians and straight women. I think it was
almost twice as
likely. 3 in 5 women, bisexual women, will experience sexual assault, intimidation and stalking from an intimate partner in their lifetime.
What are your thoughts on why that's the case? Why not just sexual violence, but any form of violence or discrimination or oppression is directed to bisexuals in particular?
I think because from the get-go, when people have low self-worth issues, things that can cause eating disorders and self-harming habits, it's easier targeting. We have less of the emotional resources to stand up to that kind of behaviour. I will say, as far as the sexualisation, I have my experience as a bi woman is that if people find out I'm bisexual, particularly heterosexual men, they'll want to have threesomes, or they'll suggest threesomes, and they'll talk about how hot it is because they're already sexualising me in a way that has nothing to do with myself or my personality or my body. Well, actually about my body, but separate to who I am as a person. And I think that's got to do with the fact that for a lot of heterosexual men, their first introduction to lesbians or women on women is through porn. And lesbian porn, I say in massive quotation marks, which is made by heterosexual men for heterosexual men, is bisexual in nature. So bisexual women, basically men are learning to sexualise bisexual women from a very young age at this point, and to not really see them as people but performers, and objectify them in pretty crazy stances. And the issue is, of course, that is kind of amplified because where bisexual women are told we will not be loved by lesbians, bisexual people in general are told that we are not deserving of relationships, and we're not worthy of relationships, and we're not worthy of that kind of love. We're not capable of it ourselves. So anyone who's been told that they don't deserve or will never have those things might be more inclined to hold on to them when they think they have them. Again, this is I can't speak more than just my own experience, but when I was younger, I was in some relationships that were very harmful for both me and my partner, because neither of us had any modelling of how that kind of relationship should be. There was no role models to look up to as to what actually consisted a healthy relationship in this
Totally.
manner.
And the lack of representation. So the illegitimacy of it, I guess, in terms of how we as bi people experience our identity in the world and how we're treated.
Yeah.
But also the objectification, the sexual objectification is almost a recipe for, those sort of steps that are taken to use violence and cause harm to
Well, it
people.
is a recipe, honestly. I think it is. We see the outcomes. The outcomes are there. It's also been an issue. There was a recent report that came out through, a homeless study for LGBTI people in Australia, which found that bisexual people were homeless from a younger age, or more likely to be homeless 5 or more times than gay and lesbian people. Bisexual men were the most likely to be admitted to hospital while they were homeless, and both of them faced high rates of sexual and physical assault compared to gay and lesbian people when they were homeless and seeking shelter. And also, interestingly enough, it was bisexual people that people who were facilitating the shelter thought it was least important to factor in their sexuality, but also bisexual people were like, no, it's very important this is taken into account.
Right.
So I think there's that thing, isn't it? Like bisexuality is not really considered to be real enough to be worth discriminating against, but we all experience it frequently, and we experience it from all sides.
And I think it's really important that these stories come out and that we are talking about these issues and discrimination that bi people face within the queer community as well as outside of it. But amongst all this sort of oppression and difficulty, there are also a lot of stories of resilience and defiance and protest.
Absolutely. And I think as well, our community, the bisexual community has existed for a long time. It might not have been as visible, but it has existed for a long time, and we have always been involved in the civil rights movement for queer rights, always. Martha, the woman, the trans woman of colour who threw the first brick at Stonewall, was a bisexual person. So she was a bisexual trans woman of colour. So it was actually like the trifecta of all the groups in our space that don't get as much voice as they should, in my opinion.
So, and it's great that we're drawing attention to this. And your involvement in the Melbourne Bisexual Network, which is a network of professionals who have decided to come together to take the outcomes of Julia Taylor's study seriously, all those sort of mental health measures where we fare a lot sort of more, I guess, more poorly than sort of lesbian, gays and straight people.
But I think as well, what's been wonderful for me to see, both from that and from our bisexual radio show, is to see people who are bisexual on the show who have not had experience of bisexual community before, and hearing their response to that and seeing them hear that their experiences are not themselves, it is not due to a fault with them. Those experiences are universal for bisexual people. And I think hearing that and having that affirmed is one of the most important things for any group that's facing that kind of marginalisation.
Great. And there's nothing like a bunch of bisexuals getting together in a room.
We have a great time every time. It's a blast. I think and there's so many different ways to call it. We can be a beehive, a crowd of bees. It's great. So many puns. If
you want to learn more about the Melbourne Bisexual Network, you can go to our website, so Google us. Or if you want to hear on a weekly basis all sort of bi content and bi-related issues, you can tune in to Joy 94.9 on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. and you'll get to hear Ruby and myself and James.
Anthony was involved with setting up the Melbourne Bisexual Network, which has already started to be a huge benefit, I think, for our community, and I'm very excited.
Thank you, Ruby, for coming on. We could talk about bisexual stuff forever.
And we do.
We do.
Thanks so much, Anthony. It was great to be here.
I'm Anthony Leckis, and thank you for watching.